Okay, so as I had said in my previous video, I was going to teach you, or may have taught you, how to scratch build a monolith, and so I am. So, biggest thing when you're scratch building is, usually I only recommend scratch building when you want to test out the idea of using a model without having to go out and buy it immediately. So, like in this case, if you wanted to get a monolith, but you don't know how you're going to use it in your army, instead of going out and dropping the $40 to buy a monolith only to find out you don't want to use it in your army, I recommend scratch building, which is this, building something out of pretty much stuff you have in your house, so long as it meets criteria, which would be it's the same size, so the dimensions of it. I don't quite remember the dimensions of this because I made it a while ago, but you can easily find them on the internet. I believe this was around like 18 centimeters tall or so, I want to say. This may be a little taller than a regular monolith, but also it should have the same war gear. So in this case, I have the teleporter entrance only on one side, the gauze flux arc reactors, these are the gauze flux arc reactors, and of course the power mainframe. So long as you include all of the war gear a model has, you should be fine. So likewise, if you were going to be like making your own Predator tank, or maybe for like Apocalypse or something, maybe using a Squigoth, instead of dropping the money for one and only to find out you don't want to use it, just make something of equivalence so long as it meets the same size criteria. So after my little spiel on what you see is what you get, I'm going to teach you how I built this. So as I'll pan this around, you can see it's made out of just pretty much random parts. The bottom of this, as left unpainted, is just styrofoam. Just a square styrofoam block I cut to the right size for the monolith as a base. Inside of this, you can't see it, which is why it's a little heavy, is a empty soda can in order to provide structure for the outsides of this, something for them to rest and lean on, so this way they won't cave in on me when you're putting it together. Then the sides are just pieces of the cardboard boxes from the models that you get. They're nice and they're thick enough to use, but thin enough to bend and move and just pretty much make the shapes that you want. So, and you definitely have lots of them. I mean, if you're building up a large army, you're going to accumulate a lot of boxes, assuming you don't throw them away immediately. So those were just cut into triangular strips, which I measured and cut, and then did the same thing with these side panels in order to kind of reinforce the edges and make them look a little different. Top piece, again, another cardboard box mounted on top of the soda can. The prism. Originally I was trying to find clear plastic, but once I realized I would have difficulty cutting it, and when I cut it I would have opaque edges that would be fairly unsightly put together, I decided on just doing a simple cardboard, essentially upside down pyramid, and painting it scorpion green. This was the only time I ever bought a Games Workshop paint, scorpion green, just because I like it, and it's kind of hard to find similar paints in like acrylic or something. Gauze flux arc reactors, although they don't look the way they normally should, they serve the same purpose and they're mounted in the same area. They are made from just little blocks of styrofoam with little cardboard tabs on the side. This tube is just plastic and simply for effect and show. This came from actually the same tubes that you usually will find in glow sticks. Not the glow stick tube itself, but usually the thin ones that you can wrap around your neck as a necklace or something, or start to strangle each other with, have these protective thick sheaths to ensure that while they're being distributed, transported, and handled, that they don't break prematurely. So that I just cut in half so I can have another piece here. The little gauze tube things that I made for show quickly are AA batteries. So this thing is actually quite heavy, which is good because you want heavy models, but heavy at the base. So this way, should you put it on an incline, it won't flip over or it won't slide off. And I can tell you, when you're playing on a plastic playing field with hills and such, plastic models fly everywhere, and top-heavy metal models like my friend's what are those winged morons called? Swooping hawks tend to fall over. Winged morons. Anyway, so those were also just painted for effect and to add some weight. The front is just more cardboard. These are the styrofoam packing peanuts I got with computer parts, and I decided in order to add kind of like a gate entry maw looking thing I just painted up quick. Little swirl effect is very simple to make. It's just using 2 tones of the same color in order to create a relief. Green works the best because the human eye can see green in the most variant of shades, which is why night vision is green. I don't know why we can do that, but that's just the way it is. I'm assuming it's some sort of like survival instinct living in forests ages ago or whatever. So that's just dry brushing a coat of scorpion green right across the top, letting that dry. Very light brushing. You know, if anything, you may want to use more of like a stippling brush. And then in the center, I just took a regular paintbrush and used a thicker coat to create the swirl effect. Edges on the side are just the same brass I use on my models, and then I just went and using a sponge brush, just painted the whole thing black. So that's pretty much it. It's a very simple design. Monolith is one of the easiest large units to construct, as well as tanks and such, just due to their simple shape and structure. If you were going for something more like a Nightbringer model or equivalent large creatures, like maybe trying to scratch build your own Carnifex, you're gonna run into a lot more problems due to the odd shapes that they're built in. Carnifex may be a little easier. Maybe, I'm assuming you could try something around the size of a tennis ball to start with, but that's another project for another day. That's it here, you know. Guess that's it, you know. No real secrets or science here. The only thing is, though, one thing I should definitely state: if you are going to be scratch building, number one, scratch builds are not allowed in tournaments unless the rules state otherwise, which they very rarely do, unless you're doing like, you know, your local hobby shop tournament. It is unlike if you're doing anything official, scratch builds are not allowed. I recommend using scratch builds only as a service in order to figure out the strategy and statistics you're going to use for the models. If you don't buy the models eventually, I'd say this is quite frowned upon, and I recommend not doing it because it's kind of a cheap thing to do. Yes, it is legal, quote unquote, if you can see my fingers, but I just recommend against it. Use it only if you want to find out how a unit works before you buy it. So that's it for this review, or not review, building guide. This is Twisted from Open Fire Gaming, and have a fun time, I guess. Yeah.